Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. Apologies for starting a few minutes. We see some people are still logging on, so we're going to give people a chance, an extra minute or two here to go ahead and log in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Okay, great. We'll go ahead and get started now. Hi, everyone. My name is Norma Nieto, and I'll be facilitating our webinar today, focused on BI analytics and data science and how we extract value from messy data. Thank you so much for joining us. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First and foremost, this session is being recorded, and the download link to the recording will be shared with you afterward. Second, we will have live Q&A at the end with our presenters. I really want to encourage you today to ask questions or challenge us with some of the data and analytics issues that you're facing. To ask a question, please use the question feature on your GoToWebinar control panel, which can be found at the right side of your screen. You can ask a question during the presentation, since they'll come in through the chat. You can also use the chat if you're more comfortable with that. And we will definitely have time to cover those. For anything we don't have time at the end, we can follow up with you after the session. So now I'd like to introduce our presenters for the day. Our main presenter today is Zac Sloane. He's an associate architect here with us at CEI. He's our subject matter expert for analytics and business intelligence. He has over 15 years experience implementing business intelligence and machine learning solutions across multiple platforms. He has formal training in statistics and machine learning algorithms, and he's particularly skilled at extracting problem definitions from fuzzy requests by working carefully with stakeholders and subject matter experts. Next up, we have Oren Sledge, who's our VP of Managed Services Sales here at CEI and a very senior IT services executive. He has over 25 years experience of building, selling, and managing solutions across multiple industries: retail, financial services, healthcare, high tech, and he's one of our very skilled technical solutions experts here at CEI. Also, just lurking in the background in case for questions is Mike Snell, our VP of Solutions Delivery. Mike leads our whole Solutions Delivery group here at CEI, and he'll chime in during the Q&A portion as needed. Before I turn it over to Zac to get started, I'd just like to quickly cover we're going to talk about today. We'll get an overview of modern business intelligence. We'll talk about some common solutions and approach, and we'll share some case studies with you. And then we'll tell you a little bit about us at CEI and how we can help you, and then we'll jump into the Q&A. So that's it. Without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Zac Sloane to lead us through the rest of the presentation.
Okay, thanks, Norma. Can everyone hear me okay? I hope so. Thanks so much for that introduction. So today we want to talk about getting value from messy data. We want to talk about BI and data science. But as I'm sure most of the people on the phone are aware, there are just so many areas that fall under this hood. And what I want to kind of level set for us is that when we work with a lot of our customers, most of the ones that have kind of the mature AI, machine learning, automated data extraction and mining solutions in place are really far up this chain. And the ones where we end up being able to help the most are customers that are kind of just getting started on their analytics journey. So hopefully that this will kind of speak to some of you, watching the webinar, just to kind of give us some background on what we're talking about here today. On the top left, we have this Gartner ascendancy path that I think probably everybody has seen. This has been around for years, and it talks about moving along this value chain from descriptive analytics to diagnostic. Why? What's going to happen next? And then somehow this kind of prescriptive AI-driven data determines everything that we kind of do at the prescriptive level. And what I found, at least, is that where a lot of our customers are at is, and this is not necessarily a negative thing, is further down towards the left. And we do a lot of work helping customers really start to actually mature their capabilities around descriptive and diagnostic analytics. And so that's why, primarily in this brief webinar, we're going to focus on, you'll see the term BI a lot, and there, of course, we mean business intelligence. We're really talking about self-service analytics and empowering organizations to start to be able to take, some actual first steps towards really putting together a true BI solution. Okay, you can move to the next slide, please, Nora. So what are today's big challenges in analytics? Well, in kind of the simplest terms, companies have data, but they struggle to turn it into action, right? Most of our customers are well aware of the kind of information they have at their disposal, and most of them have some sense of what they want to do with it, or what they want to know, but there are barriers in place that make it hard to take those initial first steps. So some of those include reliance on older technologies, canned reporting, that are very tied into functional processes that can't really be easily disturbed. Poor dissemination of data assets. So there, I mean, end users, the subject matter experts in the functional roles that would be the most likely to make some use out of an insight are too far and lacking too much knowledge about what data actually is available and what could be done with it. And that kind of feeds into the issue next to it, which is a lack of trust in raw data, right? So different people running queries against a raw data source, coming up with different answers creates a culture where you're kind of on your own. You don't trust other people's information, and nothing seems standardized. And then, of course, there's always more and more data coming in. So these kind of high-level issues, we see can be broken down into some sort of sub-problems here that you see listed. So information disparity coming from many different sources. We have our operational ERP systems, accounting systems. We have external data from market research. We have campaigns that are being run through third-party software. And then, of course, in some cases, we have Internet of Things data, sensor data out there, real-time information coming in. All of these in kind of different structures and formats. And you've all heard this kind of generalization of the problem before, right? A lot of, next steps that we see with especially larger data architecture moves into the cloud and things like that is this process of data integration. This is kind of the solution, right, to having all these disparate sources. But it's difficult. It's just not an easy thing to take massive data set that's at the per second level from a sensor and somehow integrate that with information about customer purchase behavior. Two kind of unrelated things. And it's not just a technological challenge or the data engineering challenge there. We have challenges with governance. So is this correct? What does this mean? Where did it come from? What is its lineage? Granularities, I just sort of mentioned, we have real-time data versus monthly data versus forward-looking data. Ownership is a huge issue, right? When we don't know, is it IT's job to make sure all the data is right? How does IT know what data is right? What are we supposed to be, aggregating? What are we supposed to be filtering out? Who's in charge of that? And then, of course, you have the more data you have, the more hardware, the more compute, the more storage you need. One thing I'm going to kind of focus on here is this issue of subject matter expertise being scattered or siloed. So, again, this issue of the users who are most likely to make use of an insight being too far away from the source data, and there being no clear path to kind of fix that. In some ways, we see that, materializing our reliance on very function-specific reporting that, says a lot of detail about one very specific area of the business, but can't be easily related to something else that's happening. Conflicting goals, obviously, competing for resources and timelines. Island sources. So this is, when the subject matter kind of owns their own data and it's, kind of not visible to someone who might be performing data governance, for example. Of course, we have the dreaded Excel solution where someone has, mastered Excel to the level that they're able to produce, powerful insight on something that is, a gigabyte and takes an hour to load and process, and it can't be easily shared, preserved, or handed off. And the business experts too far from the technologies was really the kind of summary of what the problem I'm talking about here. And then finally, we all really want to get to the point, right, where we're moving up that data analytics ascendancy line we saw on the first slide, getting to predictive analytics. But it remains elusive for a lot of our customers. And I think, the biggest issue is not being sure where to start, not knowing, whether it's going to work, what we're going to get out of it. And, in addition, we have, worked with some customers with, frankly, unrealistic expectations, right, of what initial forays into machine learning algorithms and building a predictive model, what it's actually going to be able to deliver, right? Machine learning and iterative process, it takes time. So all of these are kind of the big challenges we see today with our customers who are kind of trying to move up that maturity curve, but just are running into a lot of barriers. So can we move to the next slide? We'll talk about how some of these are being addressed. So what I'm going to call them, and a lot of others call the modern data analytics architecture, right? It is designed to address a lot of these problems. So that issue of management, prioritization, and buy-in, that challenge, what is the point of this? What is this going to do? We see customers using self-service BI tools to really deliver convincing stories to the stakeholders that they need to win over. And the reason for that is because self-service BI tools, and here I mean your Power BIs, your Tableaus, Clicks, SciSense, these type of products, they give an analyst the ability to bypass IT to some degree, right? And that can be a good and a bad thing. But I think in this context, right, being able to quickly develop something based on that business expertise more than that IT expertise is what self-service BI is all about. And it is, consistently we see this. It is the one thing when you show that mature dashboard that displays a couple of things that the executive is used to seeing in a 10 megabyte Excel file, PDF. It starts a lot of conversations. I also mentioned their cloud resources, right? So we, throughout this webinar and throughout, exploration of BI, machine learning, cloud resources are always going to be kind of your obvious go-to for quick, inexpensive experimentation, right? You can spin up something in Azure or AWS to hold data, a simple database and things like that can be done very, very quickly. As far as disparate sources of information, we see companies, and a few customers we have in particular moving towards the data lake type solution that you may have heard of. But we have seen a move towards curated data lakes. And so here we're talking about kind of the collection of all of the information from these different systems and sources into co-located cloud storage, possibly into something like a Hadoop or a clustered type of storage. But the key there is that it's curated and it's managed, and so governance is applied. And data lakes have designs based on use cases and not based on a kind of collect everything mentality. So we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Data integration issues. So here, I think there's kind of two different forks you can go down for fast integration. So one is data virtualization. So here we're talking about the data basically stays in the source, and you're using compute power. So whether that be typically a cloud or something that you would set up on-prem, you encode business logic and data modeling and transform logic right into the virtualization tool. And so what you end up presenting is a kind of unified layer that has everything in it. You get the kind of semantic model that we'll talk about in the next item. Plus, you get to bypass kind of the full build out of that integration engine. There are drawbacks, of course, right? It requires a lot of compute power and it can be slow. And then the other direction, right, after we've kind of curated some of the data is to use cloud-based data warehousing solutions that can be scaled so that they're performant, right? And here I'm thinking of, we work with customers in implementing Snowflake, Azure Synapse, Redshift, things like this. Those are your integrate everything into a warehouse, but potentially leave it stored at the source solutions. Then as far as the scattered subject matter expertise issue, here I think, it's all about self-service and semantic modeling. Semantic modeling, I have a slide on it in a minute, but it basically means you presented a user-facing drag and drop, everything matching expected business definitions kind of environment, right? So if you think about like the perfect Excel workbook that had, or pivot table that has, a section for every different area of your business, a semantic model would kind of, at a high level, brings that to the user. And then the DevOps approach that we've talked about in some other webinars, it forces that feedback loop, right? When we're working constantly with the business to define new requirements, business intelligence and analytics is notoriously hard to pin down requirements. Users don't know exactly what they need to look at. It has kind of an exploratory nature to it. And so using a very agile approach, right, where all the DevOps principles are followed, can really shorten that distance, right, between the technology development and the end users, who are really the analysts, right? Those are the people that can get the insight out of the data. And then finally, on predictive insights, cloud-based ML and AI technology allows rapid prototyping. So if we have folks that are kind of the data science, machine learning, statistics ilk, then we see customers obviously doing their experimentation in the cloud. We've been able to do this for a few customers where we can kind of quickly take a data set, extract it from their systems, put it up in Azure, and then start working in Azure ML immediately, right? And so we don't have to acquire any new software or compute resources for that. We just rent them essentially. Okay, let's move on to the next slide so we can keep up with time here. So I just wanted to kind of start out with, as we kind of walk through specifics of some of our approaches, again, just the importance of these interactive dashboards when we're talking about analytics, whether we're talking about predictive or backward-looking, descriptive analytics, functional reporting, executive reporting, things being interactive is absolutely the key to getting an analytics mindset to start to grow and an analytics-driven culture to start to grow in your organization. So the one we're looking at here is Power BI, but I'm sure everyone's seen Tableau, Click, and Sisense, and some other products are also garnering some attention. We see most of our customers using Power BI and Tableau. And just obviously some of the bonus points you get with having a professional looking dashboard is you get analysts to start asking questions. And then they start asking for, what else could we put in here? Do we have this kind of data? And then that conversation starts, right? Okay, let's move on to the next slide. So a second approach that we've implemented with customers in the past, and this is to address kind of that first issue of disparate systems being difficult to integrate with each other and ownership being unclear, right? I call this curated data lakes. And you'll see the terms bronze, silver, and gold used. I think those are actually coined, as I've seen them most from Databricks, which is a cloud-based processing in place transform tool, right, essentially, also used for machine learning and some things like that. But the idea here, right, is to take all of our source data and basically create what we call a bronze lake, right? And here this is our kind of retain all data area, our landing zones. You can think of them. Here if we're doing this in the cloud, we might be using something like Azure Data Factory to pull data in. We may be storing it in something that is, kind of data lake based or file system based that's running, your Hadoop style storage, or just in kind of the bulk AWS storage, Azure storage zones, right? So we're bulk loading things. Things are coming in. These are our nightly loads, our real-time loads. We're not doing anything to the data here. But the key piece here is that we move things to Silver Lakes, and this is a curated process. So here we have multiple Silver Lakes, and really this graphic probably would be better if I could have drawn it with the business owners next to each of these, because the key here is that these are user-driven, use case-driven, curated lakes, and that means that here we're starting to select what data we're going to retain. We're starting to do some pre-aggregations. Crucially, we're applying our governance and our master data management, meaning that we're converting and mapping things into the correct business values. So we're assigning business units, we're providing categorization, potentially we're doing scoring or ranking or running other algorithms over the data. But we're doing all this in place. So we've essentially got subcopies that are curated, that are business function focused or product focused is another way to think of them. And then from there, we can have a point where our end users, our analysts, our data scientists can work directly with a product, right, that's been produced by technology for a certain specific set of use cases. So an example from a grocery store chain we had done this with is they pulled all their data together into a bronze lake, but then the Silver Lakes were like for customer analysis data that had a certain retention level, and then another zone was focused on data warehouse preparation. So all the data being specifically labeled and dimensionalized for insertion into a data warehouse. And then that kind of connection between the users and the Silver Lakes is what we call the gold layer, where we have our production reporting. We can do our ad hoc analytics. We might even have our prediction machine learning running from these sources. Okay, let's go to the next slide. Let me just go over this one real quickly. So this is actually an example of kind of the distributed versus centralized data lake approach. And what I'm describing, what we've seen a move towards is the version on the right, where each business unit is kind of owning its own data lake assets, which are kind of in that silver level, right? And from there, they're free to kind of quickly develop analytics against those. Let's go to the next slide, please. So self-service analytics, what do we mean by that? This is kind of the glue that's holding all of this concept together, right? Self-service analytics is when we have the analysts or end users who need the information able to extract it without relying on IT specifically. Okay, so What are the benefits? That obviously it's fast, but in addition, it's a good way to start to develop requirements pipelines for what reporting is going to be most needed. So you can think of self-service analytics as kind of the proving grounds or experimentation zone that kind of surfaces what things need to be put into production. And of course, if you have the more people you have pulling their own data, I don't mean randomly their own data, I mean through semantic models, as we'll discuss here, the more you build that analytics culture of everyone starting to ask questions. So what do you need to do self-service analytics? And this is really what we're pushing, right? We think that companies that are newer to or wondering where to go with analytics should start with something self-service. Prerequisites, I think, for doing it effectively, you have to either have this semantic model I'm going to talk about, or you have to be kind of savvy enough with data engineering to actually pull your own data. So, if you are connecting to a production system or data warehouse with your Power BI or Tableau, you're going to potentially need to know how to aggregate the data, pivot the data, join it, relate it, and that's why this is self-service, right? So when you produce something that way, you're not going to directly be able to put that in production. Tools I mentioned, for actually transforming the data, doing filtering and joining and the things you kind of need to do to build a model. Each of these kind of has their own sub-tool. So in the Power BI, you have Power Query, which is a very nice tool. You can also see in Excel if you haven't used it. And then in Tableau, Tableau Prep, much more visual, but does kind of the same thing. It's taking, it's building your data sets, right, from the source data. What use cases should we use self-service BI for? Well, it's for simple questions, right? We're not trying to build self-service. We're not talking about building a predictive application. We're really talking more about exploration and validation of data with self-service, although there are ways that you can start to put together some predictive data sets and actually apply machine learning with Power BI and Tableau. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Okay, as I keep mentioning the semantic model, and I think this is one of our most recommended ways to really enable self-service BI. And here we're talking about a business-friendly layer. So it's going to provide things organized. Think about your relevant sort of columns are all organized into folders by function of business or typically functional area, right, or process area. And the end user doesn't have to worry about how the source data is related, how summations work, how calculations work, because that's been encapsulated, that business logic has been designed into the semantic model. And so, what does that mean? If you've worked with Power BI, a Power BI data set where you have imported your tables or direct queried them, and potentially you've done transformation on them, just relating them together, right? With there's one customer for every transaction kind of thing. So typically it resembles what you would get with a complex set of SQL joins, right? But you're doing it in a technology that uses compression, that uses in-memory storage, so it's highly performant. Drag and drop, right? We're talking about being able to just connect to it and drag in things, filter date ranges, filter different criteria, and just see the answers. And critically, right, that if you want to really be able to kickstart self-service, you need to be able to tell users that these semantic models are certified. They are the correct source of truth for this subject area. And when you can do that, you can just direct users there and say, have fun, start analyzing, because you won't come up with the wrong answer. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, I just wanted to touch on he said that I sort of alluded to that as we start to put the self-service BI pieces in place and we start to train our users to think more analytically, we want to be building best practices. We want to be doing actual organized training to some degree, even if it's just directing users. We've seen some customers that have really just directed their users or even required them to do some self-learning. There's a lot of obviously excellent material available for self-training in Power BI and Tableau and even some of the other ones. And just thinking about, planning and balancing what we want to achieve with what we currently have. Big data, advanced ETL, building out curated data lakes will, require some IT investment, requires certain skill sets. And that has to be planned enough and hired for, right? So, but again, that's why we think that the self-service tools and training in those should really lead any kind of push or improvement in an analytics culture. I think that not only does that build up the well of demand, but it actually creates a better future working relationship cross-functionally. And there's just the last 2 points there. Training can obviously combine live and asynchronous course material with just research and asking the community that's out there. So almost every problem that we've run into with Power BI or Tableau has ultimately been answered somehow, right, by, if not the vendors, the community that's out there. And of course, a center of excellence, always something that we kind of direct customers towards when we're trying to shift cultures. And we've talked with some of our customers about how best we can, they can start to set that up. Okay, I want to leave time for these case studies. So one more quick slide on just something that I think it is worth thinking about. Achieving quick wins with modern BI. High impact folks, analytics don't necessarily have to wait for architecture, right? We keep pushing the self-service features, let you get started right now. And just listed out some key steps here that I think, we can follow as an end user, as an analyst, even as a manager, executive, to quickly get something from BI, to quickly get an analytics win. And I won't go through all the steps here, but essentially it's all about asking a good question that you have the data out there to answer, and then just getting started, pulling that data in, doing that modeling in your prep tool. And again, we're talking about on your computer, right? We haven't set up any servers or automated ETL or anything like that. And then just analyze it, validate, and share, right? So I want to make sure the takeaway here is that we don't need to build out data lakes and things like that to start getting quick wins from BI. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so I have a couple of case studies. I just really wanted to share that I think are great examples of what we're talking about: quick wins, empowering self-service. So we had a global manufacturer client, specifically their AR department had come to our customer, the analytics team there, and we're having a lot of challenges with their existing reporting. So these were Hyperion-based, really dated, and very, very, very slow canned reports against either like these old OLAP cubes or they were actually just directly hitting the warehouse. And the end users, were running these reports that were built to answer their questions, but were not getting the answers they needed. And their solution was frequently to just do kind of an export of all of the data they could possibly pull into Excel, and then start to do pivot tables and sorting and things like that. So they had a pretty clear list of needs for improvements in reporting. But the IT team was undergoing some changes, did not want to invest a lot of resources in building reports. And so the solution we recommended was to build a semantic layer specifically for the AR space on top of their data warehouse. And so, we set up a cross-functional team with their IT and then the AR business stakeholders, and we validated out all the use cases. These are all the kinds of things we want to be able to ask of the data. And from there, I was able to kind of slice out a piece of the warehouse and just directly load up a few years worth of data into Azure. And the reason they wanted to use Azure was they're moving away from owning their own hardware there. And then we built a Power BI data model in Power BI Premium to achieve the semantic layer abstraction. And so we did all of that encoding of business logic. We actually went ahead and built out some of their top use case reports for them to give a starting or jumping off point. But from there, it was really focused on training those business users on what they need to do to start to ask questions of this semantic model and build their own reports. And the benefits on top of the speed improvement and actually being able to answer the questions, in decommissioning old reports, we really empowered these business users, right, to be able to take the lead on report development. Now it's not about developing a report that I use and I own. It's about developing a report that's going to be added to this collection that we're all using. Okay, and on the next slide we have, I think this is just a quick look at the architecture. So I'm not going to spend much time on this. You can just see, we used Power BI on top of this Azure SQL database that was pulling data from the on-prem data warehouse. Next slide, please. Okay, and another case I'm just really excited about, and this is what I'm working on now, for a mid-size regional pet store, pet supply store. They have a lot of great customer data. They have full visibility into customer transactions, and they have a marketing team that uses third-party software to deliver coupons to users. They had a specific concern with customer attrition, specifically to online retailers. So the goal here was to predict what customers were most likely to leave, and then from that, which ones were most likely to stay if they were set a certain incentive. So our approach is, first of all, using Power BI to kind of do some historical analysis and validate the assumptions of the marketing team about what the natural customer behavior or segments are. Then we're taking the point of sale data and the marketing campaign data, pulling those up into the cloud, and using Azure Data Factory to perform tasks on that data. So doing the actual labeling, who attrited, who didn't attrite. And then we're using Azure Machine Learning to build models around which customers are most likely to attrite and which ones are most likely not to attrite if set a coupon. And then, of course, we're visualizing the results of this in Power BI, and we're able to, we will be able to, once we have a predictive model in production, connect Excel reports directly to that output that's in Azure, and then we'll, have that be daily available to the marketing team. So that'll give us, this kind of automatic customer target lists for marketing to send coupons to, as well as visibility into the real-time success of our campaigns. Okay, and on the next slide, I think we have Oren. Oren,
thanks,
I'll turn it over to you here. Yep, thank you.
Okay, super. I appreciate it. Nice job. So yeah, it's hopefully you found the presentation to be of value. Here's some of the areas that we can provide from a services perspective. Obviously you start with the advisory services all the way down to implementation and ongoing support as needed. We are aligned to all the major cloud providers out there. I'd be happy to talk to you about the differences and how you can benefit from certain product offerings. If we go to the next slide. One of the takeaways I wanted you to think about was how to get started. We're a fan of quick wins. In today's world, getting to perfection, it's sometimes you get there quicker by incremental wins. And so we like to start with an assessment, 3 5-day could be 10 days, if depending upon schedules. But I think the point is get to the goals that you want to achieve and get to a plan that demonstrates achievement of goals, and also utilizing POCs along the way to prove out quickly and create incremental value. You know, in today's society, it's all about the data. Data is a differentiator. Being able to crunch faster and make quicker decisions is key, and will continue to be a competitive asset in today's business world. Next slide. So we're ready to help. You know, like I mentioned, we can do the 5-day assessment. Depending upon where you are with your data maturity and tooling maturity, we can provide ad hoc assistance from advisory to implementation work, and also help you build out your strategy to be successful. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. Norma, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Oren. Thank you so much, Zach. We will now jump into the Q&A portion. I haven't seen too many questions, but if you do have one, you can either raise your hand or ask a question. While we're waiting for some questions, I will take the opportunity to just say Happy Veterans Day and to thank any veterans on our call for their service. So I haven't seen any questions, so we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But if you do have any questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to reach out to Oren. So just quick before we go, I want to give a quick preview of the upcoming webinars we have on our winter series. So on December 2nd, we're going to take a look at computing at the edge, a preview of AWS IoT Greengrass technology, which really enables some interesting things to get information. We'll be looking potentially at a case study with a brewery and how they hope to keep their beer cold using this technology, which we know is very important. And then in January, we'll take a more strategic look at cloud adoption strategies, really about optimizing your application migration and making sure that your cloud is optimized. So with that, we appreciate everyone's time. We'd like to say thank you on behalf of Zach and Oren, and also thank them for their great presentation today. We will be sharing the link to the recordings. Usually we'll get them to you tomorrow. That you can use to review, share with others in your organization. And if folks are interested in the presentation itself, we will also send that along. And again, if you need help, please reach out to Oren Sledge or your favorite CEI account executive. Have a great afternoon, and we thank you so much for joining us today.